I would like to introduce, and I'll just kind of get some housekeeping items underway. My name is Kirsten McPherson, and I am the marketing director for the Golden Shovel Agency. And we are incredibly excited to have Springsted here with us today to talk about opportunity zones. Is your community investment ready? This is a really dynamic presentation with a really great group of folks. So kind of hang tight throughout the webinar. We will have a question and answer period at the end. As questions come up, you'll notice an area at the bottom of your screen or at the side of your screen to be able to put in your questions. So feel free to do so throughout as questions are happening, and we will provide the answers at the end. Also, this is a recorded webinar. So after the webinar, you will be receiving the following probably on Monday with the webinar presentation slides, the recorded webinar, as well as a white paper and a prospectus for investment-ready communities. You'll also be receiving a brochure for the Springsted Housing and Economic Development practice group, and we are super excited to be able to provide you all of these materials. So again, you'll see that probably on Monday. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Jean Goddard, who is the Senior VP and the Director for the Housing and Economic Development, and we will kick this off. So with that, Jean, the floor is yours.
Goddard was Senior Vice President for Springsted. Today I have with me Michaela Huat, who is a Vice President Consultant with our team, and Angela Reif, who is with our team also as an analyst. Michaela and I will be leading the presentation, and Angela will also be participating in helping us answer any questions they have during the presentation timeframe. Springsted is a multidisciplinary municipal advisory firm based in Minneapolis, St. Paul, with offices scattered throughout the country in 8 locations. Our housing and economic development practice helps our clients build their future. We specialize in the development of helping communities with development strategies, project feasibility studies, project finance and business plan analysis, developer review. We also support our clients in helping them negotiate public sector participation in projects. Some of our areas of expertise include leading focus groups, helping communities create a vision and an action plan, establishing metrics to evaluate outcomes and to benchmark activity. And we help our clients establish TIF and tax increment financing plans, tax abatement, local revolving loan funds. We also help them with the monitoring and the reporting requirements by their local or state governments. We're an independent advisory firm, and we represent our clients in helping them grow. Some of Springsted's other practice groups include operational finance and fiscal planning services, public finance, assistance with bonds and bond sales, organizational management and human resources, investment services, and executive recruitment. Today's Opportunity Zone webinar topics, we're going to help focus and guide discussion on an overview of opportunity zones from the eco-development perspective. We're going to talk about what opportunity zones, what it means to be investment ready. We're going to discuss how to create an opportunity zone investment prospectus, how to be investment ready, and what it means to create messaging and materials that are important for a certified investor or opportunity fund and when they're making their investment strategy. We're going to discuss how to encourage opportunity zone investments in your communities, and then we're going to have some case studies at the end. So when raising capital for a development project is always a challenge. It can take a lot of time and energy and focus. Raising capital is also a strategic decision for any project because there are different types of money available from multiple sources and different costs. One of the first steps that any developer takes in developing and creating a project is they need to understand the funding type or funding mix that they're looking at, what's the most appropriate for them and for the project at its current stage, and how to ensure that they have a strong team and the partners to help them execute their overall strategy. Next, they take a deep dive into establish a plan so that the project can establish enough revenue to service any debt related to the project and generate a profit, which is always important for the developer. The more speculative developments will need additional equity investment to be successful, and that's maybe where some opportunity zone discussion has been taking place so far. What other type of funding requirement? It's important that the project is investment ready. So when Springsted works with our clients and working with them on a project, we evaluate them and look at them using 6 questions. And these are, is this something the community really wants? Who are we dealing with? Is a project feasible? Will our community financially benefit from the project? Is a subsidy needed to help support it? And will the developer or the company do what they say they're going to do? As you're exploring ways to support your opportunity zone investments in your community, we recommend keeping these questions in mind, and we'll address them throughout our presentation today. So opportunity zones, what's their purpose? Well, opportunity zones are a federal tax policy. And some people use this program when talking about opportunity zones, but it's really tax policy. And it's designed to spur economic development and job creation in distressed communities throughout the country. Opportunity zones are an economically distressed area or part of a community. And they were determined eligible by looking at, states looked at their census tracts, and they were eligible to submit to the IRS a list of 25% of those. And the census tracts really met 3 main criteria. Poverty rate that's at least 20%, or that the median income within that tract is 80% of the statewide median income if it's located outside of a metropolitan area. Tracts also were looked at that had family income that does not exceed 80% of the statewide median income if it was inside of a metropolitan area, or whichever was higher. So census tracts that were chosen based upon these criteria and designated last summer, and they will last until 2028. Unfortunately, no new zones will be created unless by an act of Congress. So if your community was not designated with having an opportunity zone, there is no opportunity, there's no eligibility for you at this time. So what makes opportunity zones so unique compared to other programs or tax policy that are out there right now? It's an investor incentive rather than a corporate run. It's designed to concentrate capital by bringing funds from multiple sources together into one. It rewards patient capital. All incentives are tied to longevity of the investment. It gives the investor a stake in the community's future by investing in a distressed part of their community. It unlocks equity capital, which has been a source of funds out there that have limited use in the past for new development projects. It provides no upfront subsidy, so which is great for a lot of communities that are looking when they're creating their economic development strategies. And it can move at the speed of the marketplace. Other key features of opportunity zones are that they're flexible because no low income communities are the same. They come in all different sizes and shapes. They're in rural areas of communities. They're in farming areas or rural neighborhoods. They're in urban neighborhoods as well. So there's some flexibility there in the type of investments that can take place. There's no statutory cap on the amount of capital that can flow into opportunity zones in a given year, like some other federal programs or state programs that you may be used to using or participating with. And they're pretty simple to use. It just requires some financial forms sent off to the IRS and encourage investment and transactions and a broad participation. We'll talk more about these later. Some people have expressed some concerns about opportunity zones. There's some fear that because there are no specific guidelines, that investments will be lopsided and skewing towards the lowest risk developments. And the benefits and they may not benefit low-income individuals that are actually in these districts. Stanford Business School's written a paper about opportunity zones, and they say because opportunity zones investments are not required to demonstrate specific benefits to the existing local populations, investors may select projects that are solely based upon their return of investment and their goals. Now, there's also talk about gentrification of neighborhoods, that it may bring in new developments that push folks out in urban areas to other parts of the community where they're not used to being or living or participating in their community. How do opportunity zones spur economic development? Opportunities were created as a tax policy, not as a program. So there's no official oversight of the tax statement that is filed in the IRS. But first, investors can defer their tax and from any prior gains that they've made brought from the stock market or from mutual funds that they've owned in the past until the earlier date which of the investment is sold or exchanged, was December 31st of 2026. As long as the gain is reinvested into an opportunity fund. Second, if the investor holds the investment in the opportunity fund for at least 10 years, the investor would be eligible for an increase in the basis equal to the fair market value of that investment until the date of that exchange or the investment is sold. Where does the equity that goes into an opportunity zone come from? Well, the group that really pushed this program, Economic Innovation Group, estimates there's $6.1 trillion unrealized capital gains in the stock market and mutual funds that are held by individuals and corporations. No one really knows how much of that value will be invested into opportunity funds that then go into projects within zones. But needless to say, there's a lot of capital that's out there that's projected to be used to support projects within opportunity zones. Funds will be able to defer or reduce the federal tax liability of these assets and channel them into a zone. And opportunity zone investors can decide what projects are good for them and how to best deploy their own capital. Opportunity zone tax policy favors real estate investments because it was designed to support and grow real estate projects. Real estate investors typically drive their value from a combination of construction or renovation and long-term appreciation. Real estate firms typically hold their properties for 5 to 7 years or longer, pending their capital deployment model. So opportunity zones are a natural fit for investors with long-term investment strategies and allow them to maximize the tax gains under this program if they hold it for the 10 years that are under current law. Yes, and some funds may be looking at doing investments solely into businesses. Opportunity zone investments can flow to a business located within a zone if they're supporting land or the building of in an opportunity zone that is used for the first time by an opportunity fund or a qualified opportunity business. A building that is in the zone that was previously used or substantially improved, and we'll talk about that in a minute, or equipment that has never been used within the zone, or equipment that's been substantially improved. Those rules kind of make it hard for a business to access the funds that are available in the creation of opportunity zones. But there is some groups out there that are really trying to figure out how to do that, and we'll talk about some of those later here. There are some exemptions and restrictions on what a qualified opportunity business is. Current IRS rules exclude what is known as a sin business. So this would be a business that is either a private or a commercial golf course, a country club, a massage parlor, a hot tub facility, a suntan facility, a racetrack or gambling facility, or any business that buys or sells alcoholic beverages are not eligible to be access capital through an opportunity fund. So if you have a tattoo parlor, they're good, but suntan facilities are not. Opportunity zone businesses, some other realities that unlike new market tax credits or other federal programs, opportunity fund investments are unlikely to subsidize a project because the project must be able to grow in value and return an investment on the fund. Most competitive projects will be those that already have value without an opportunity funds investment, but will benefit from the additional investment that's created by the tax policy. And since a large share of the opportunity fund monies will come out of previous investments in Wall Street, you can expect that those investors are going to want the opportunity fund businesses to still be able to return a 5 to 10x rate plus the tax benefit. So many opportunity zones won't see a lot of investment or creation into new in businesses within those funds. And opportunity zone funds will make a good deal better, but not make a bad deal good, which is pretty typical for most economic development incentive programs. What's the timing for an opportunity zone investments? Well, opportunity zone fund investors have 180 days to invest into a fund after they have their capital gain. And this may be a limiting factor right now because there aren't a lot of investment ready projects out there. So we have seen a delay in some of the capital that's being placed out there by opportunity funds that are already ready and up and going. An opportunity fund also must hold that investment 90% of its investments and make those take place within 6 months after an event taking place. Real estate investments in opportunity zones must have a substantial improvement within 30 months after the investment takes place. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. And because of the timing of the program, we're going to see most of the funds make their investments in the next year to 24 months so that they can maximize the tax advantage that they receive from the program. So what does substantial improvement mean with regard to a facility or a site? For example, if a developer is building a building that they buy for $1 million, and if that $1 million, 100,000 of it is attributed to the value of the land and the remaining 900,000 is attributed to the value of the building. Substantial improvement means that a qualified investment made by the opportunity fund into that building must be double the market value of the building. So an additional $900,000 must be invested into that site to make it eligible for the project. Because it's easier to find ways to meet the substantial improvement threshold for residential or mixed-use developments, we may not see a lot of opportunity funds being invested into industrial buildings. Also, the federal rules currently are silent on what substantial improvement means for investments in raw land or new construction. But the spirit of the law encourages that the investor make a considerable investment in the opportunity zone development to include new buildings and facilities. So if somebody asks you if they're buying raw land, how much should they put into that? There is no market guide right now or threshold guide, but let the market lead the value of that investment. So here's a kind of an illustrative look of what would take place with an opportunity zone investment. Michaela will show this more in an example moving forward. But if you look at the 180-day grace period listed there at the beginning here in 2018 and 2019, 10 years, in 5 years, the tax deferred and the capital gain will be reduced by 10%. Year 7, 15%. Year 9, still at 15%. And year 10, you get 100%, zero capital gains on the opportunity fund sale profits. So when looking at a standard investment that you would make of $1 million over a 10-year threshold or 10-year period, assuming an 8% annual return, without the opportunity zone, just a standard investment, you anticipate getting back $1.4 million of your initial investment of $1 million. But using the opportunity zone, investors can anticipate receiving $1.9 million back, an increase of nearly $500,000 on the original investment. So the encouragement of making the investment into an opportunity zone is great for the investor. What is an opportunity zone fund? The vehicle that will lead the investment into your zone. So it is the group that will deploy the capital. It can be either an individual investor or it could be a fund that you may have heard about. An investor takes their capital gains and puts that into the fund, but they have to be an organization that has a capital gains tax liability. So cities, counties, nonprofits, foundations cannot invest in opportunity zone funds. As mentioned in the earlier slide, taxpayers are eligible to self-certify. So there may be investments that take place know about or not aware, because the individual investor does it on their own. And because of the privacy related to tax returns, individuals and corporations will be filing on their own. There's no organization that's going to be listing or publishing those dollars or amounts or activity within funds around the country. So, right now, there are approximately 70 Opportunity Zone funds that have been publicly announced, and the National Council of State Housing Agency has a real nice description of what those are. You can go to their website and download a copy of their guide, or you can contact us and I'll forward it to you as well. It's a really comprehensive list. It talks about what funds are, the size that they're looking, with the amount of capital that they're trying to create as part of their zone, if they have a targeted area of the country, a region or a state, or if they're national in scope where they're going to invest. How much is their investment going to be in size? Typical ranges are going to be anywhere from 1 million to 50 million, but like with venture capital funds, the larger the fund, they're going to deploy larger dollars of money. So if you're looking to access or reach out to an opportunities fund that's in the several hundred to $1 billion in size, know that they're going to want to make tranches of, say, 10 to 20 million dollars, and not look at smaller projects, but be targeted towards larger ones. Where are those investments going to take place? Like we discussed earlier, affordable housing, commercial and real estate, hospitality, mixed-use development, single-family, student housing, and workforce housing, and then small businesses. What's going to happen next, or what's already occurred? So the Opportunity Zone policy was established last year. The zones were identified and targeted. And then last fall, the IRS released the self-certification guide and the draft rules. With the government shutdown, though, there was a hearing planned last week that was canceled, so there has been no activity in going through the proposed public comment that was received last fall. And so you can anticipate that once the government gets back to work, that'll probably take 30 to 60 days for them to reschedule the hearing and add more public comment. So I wouldn't anticipate until sometime end of Q1, early Q2 for them to actually release the final rules. According to Bloomberg, the IRS has received 150 comments last fall to ask questions or better definition of some of the things that are in the IRS rules. Most of them were related around the substantial improvement discussion that we just talked about, or original use. And both of these are important in understanding how developments will be able to retain their eligibility for the Opportunity Zone favorable tax statement moving forward. Anticipate that most of the investments in Opportunity Zones are going to take place in the next year again. Funds will start to be invested once the rules finally come out. And then in 2021, 2022, we'll really see the first picture of the impact of the investments once construction has already started. Now we're going to turn to a little bit to understanding what it means to be investment ready. So what can local government do? If Opportunity Zones, the federal tax policy around them is directed towards the private investor, and they can self-certify, and there's no requirement for them to receive prior approval from a federal agency or local government to receive that tax benefit. What can local governments do to support or encourage investments that take place in their Opportunity Zone? As mentioned, investments will take place largely in 2019 and 2020 to receive the maximal benefit. So having projects investment ready are key. Local governments can work to identify projects that meet their local interests. They can work on completing planning and pre-development activities that support those Opportunity Zone investments. And they can work to control properties by accessing them or through a option or through purchase to see investments taking place on key properties. And we'll talk more about this in the coming slides. So being Opportunity Zone investment ready, it's kind of like pieces of the following: shovel-ready, early-stage company prospectus, and a municipal bond offering statement. Since we have folks on the webinar here that are coming from all different disciplines within local government, economic development, and housing development, small business development, investment, and finance folks from local government, you can think about these three things from your own specialties and what they mean in becoming investment ready. So let's start with what shovel ready means. So most economic development staff understand what this is about, but shovel ready is basically means that a project is past the planning stage and can start construction quickly. For those that have worked to create a certified shovel ready site, it means basically that everything that is needed to close a real estate transaction is completed even before marketing the site. And or a project that just needs a little bit of boost of stimulus money that might help make an immediate impact on the community or the local economy. For economic development staff, having a shovel-ready site is one of the most competitive site marketing tools that we have. For those that work with early stage businesses, small business development, it's really about what it's in for the investor. We've all seen many times that investors or entrepreneurs talk about a project or a business. They really think they got a cool technology or that the product is something that the consumers really want. But often they fail to ask, what's in it and they ask, why doesn't anybody want to invest in me because everything is so great? Well, raising capital is a balance. And entrepreneurs that are most successful in raising funds are those that talk about their business plan and strategy and how they will make money. They discuss what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And they share why they are seeking outside investors. They ask and talk about what the investors will do to help them and how they can help the investment. But most importantly, they're very clear about how an investor will make money in return and how long it will take. For those in the finance department within the community, think about what's in an official statement. Think about, you're trying to sell bonds, you're trying to encourage an investor to purchase those bonds for your community. So what's all listed in there? You're talking about description of the bonds, description of the community. You're talking about your taxations, your tax rating, the strength of your local economy. What's the stat, is there any political risk from an election that may cause a change in public policy? So when you dig deeper into wanting to figure out what investment ready means, it's kind of the nexus or a combination between what you should focus on is the things that matter and what you can control. So since development is not going to happen on every acre or every parcel within your opportunity zone, you need to create a focus strategy that will help potential investors look at your community and projects that they want to be interested in doing. Conduct a survey of those development opportunities and what will maybe attract them to be investment ready. Secure, like I mentioned earlier, secure control of those key properties or projects. Buy land, get an option agreement. Do all the pre-planning development work that's needed to make it investment ready. Get your zoning in place. If there's some infrastructure that's needed to support a project, if you don't put the sewer and water in the ground, make sure that you have the engineering in place like you would do for a shovel-ready site. Opportunity zone capital, develop strategies that may support other organizations that want to invest in your community. States like Maryland are targeting $50 million plus for opportunity zone investments. Missouri is proposing a cap on state historic tax credits or other state rules related to opportunity zones. California is looking to pass a bill that exempts opportunity zones from certain environmental quality rules. So think about those both on a state and a local perspective as how you can encourage investments. And Michaela will talk more about how you can pair those other programs together to make opportunity zones more effective. You also want to create a prospectus, so a document or a sheet that sells your community, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And partner with local leaders or executives to help get them, the civic-minded ones, more interested in reaching out to do an investment within your community. So when you're putting together a prospectus, you may have seen some samples out there already. We feel that you should be focusing more on a specific project or specific sites. Communities have general marketing pieces that talk about their community, but to be really ready and to support an investment, think about doing something more specific. So, think about what's in an investor discussion, why an investor would want to participate in a project. Help them try to understand what problem you're trying to solve. What are the unique opportunities or advantages of your community? How much money is needed and how much needs to be raised? And what's the return on investment they will get on top of the tax investment? Are there any barriers to projects within your community? And why do people want to invest into your town? Write this after you get everything else pulled together, so you make sure your investment pitch includes all the information and facts that you have available to you. The finance discussion should look at the value and the appraised value, the market value of the project. Put together a pro forma that pulls together analysis of project funds, what equity would be needed, bank loans, any other government programs that are in there. What are the projected costs for the project? Make sure you have that well understood. And if you're looking at a business or opportunity zone fund business to receive some dollars, look at what the value of that business is, how much money they need to be raised, and what those funds will be used for. The prospectus should also include other community information, do a summary of your town or a summary of the zone areas, what significant milestones have been achieved to date or need to be yet achieved. Are there any communities that are competitors to yours? Or is there a project that's happening in another opportunity zone or community near you that may compete for the investment? And is there a second market or an exit strategy for the 10 years out once the investor may want to pull their funds out of the opportunity zone project? Pull together your investment programs and strategy that may be targeted towards those businesses. Make sure you understand your demographics, your workforce, your educational systems, and include that information in your prospectus. So the best way to build investor confidence is to exceed their expectations by having the information available and being investment ready. Remember that the 3 Ps of economic development include preparation, development partners, and then promoting. Now I'll turn it over to Michaela to talk about some case studies.
Building on the information that Jean had provided, we put together a couple of case studies to walk through how it really will look. These are hypothetical examples. The first one we're looking at would be within a regional development within a regional center. In this scenario, the city would receive a proposal by a developer for the redevelopment of blighted property that could include a new rental housing development. So included within that project would be acquisition of the blighted property, demolition, and then subsequent construction of a new project. It's determined that that project is located within an opportunity zone, and the developer has indicated to you that the opportunity zone funds may be a financing component. So as city staff, we want to understand what any implications to the project would be as far as city participation and how the financing would look. This project would include the developer financing, which is a typical funding sources of debt, equity, and any other funding sources, whether it's grants, loans, etc. Tax increment financing or another subsidy may be a financing component of that to help mitigate some of the blight or redevelopment costs. And the opportunity zone funds would provide an additional source of equity for this project. As Gina discussed earlier, the project must be financially feasible to generate market returns. And the opportunity zone funds would provide an additional source of equity that would help to make that project be more financially feasible. The anticipated investors for this type of project in this location are likely to be either local and or self-invested within the project. To help illustrate how the opportunity zone funds would be included within the financing, we have listed just some development costs related to a typical redevelopment project. You've got acquisition, on-site improvements, building construction, and then other soft costs related to the project. A traditional method of financing those development costs would include developer equity and bank loan to finance the improvements. With the Opportunity Zone funds, as you'll see, there's an additional equity source that would be the Opportunity Zone investment, and that assists in reducing both the equity needed by the investor as well as the bank loan. So the total sources are the same in both the traditional and the Opportunity Zone fund, but you'll see in this illustration, after factoring in the as well as the after-tax returns based on the tiered system of how long the investment is retained, the developer's return is expected to increase with the Opportunity Zone fund injection. So the second case study is similar, but in this case, we'd be looking at a medium to large size community. And here again, the city would receive a development proposal for another redevelopment project that would include a larger mixed use project, which would include rental housing and retail. Again, this project is located within an Opportunity Zone, and the developer had indicated that Opportunity Zone funds may be a financing component. Similar to the other project, the traditional financing would be debt, equity, most likely grant or loan programs. Subsidy could be a component for some of the extraordinary costs. And again, the project must be financially feasible and drive the returns for the developer in order to proceed with construction of it. Here we anticipate that the investors are more likely to be self-invested in the project using their own capital gains. Again, looking at the sources and uses of funds, the costs related to that redevelopment project, the traditional sources of funds, and then with the Opportunity Zone funds, you'll see the reduction in the equity and the bank financing, and that will assist with driving up the developer's return on the project. Here's another way of looking at the capital stack of financing. If you're looking at a traditional project, you'll see the traditional financing is debt, and then the developer equity. When looking at an Opportunity Zone funds, there may be other financing programs that will assist in reducing both the traditional financing as well as the amount of equity that the developer has to inject in the project. By doing so, we'll drive up the return on investment for that developer. So what does the Opportunity Zone funds do for this project and developer? It will typically make projects more economically feasible, more financially feasible. It will drive up the return on investment for that developer by reducing the amount of equity invested with the same return on the cash flow of the project. Typically, it will lower what the cost of capital is to attract for that project, and the owner's investment will be reduced by the additional equity investors. This all leads to the higher probability of a successful project in the community. And the Opportunity Zone funds will allow those projects to be constructed without taking in additional other funding sources. This is another illustration that Jean had discussed regarding what the long-term value is to the investors. And looking here, again, looking at a 5-year period, starting in you'll see that if held for 5 years, 90% of that original capital gain is subject to tax. If you hold it for 7 years, that goes down to 85%, and all the way to year 10, 100% forgiveness on that appreciation. So again, it's for patient investment in capital over a longer period of time. Will drive up the investment. Another illustration showing between years 5 and 10 for the Opportunity Zone investments. The cash flow is projected to be much more significant with Opportunity Zone investments.
And it's a list of our sources for our presentation today that will be included in the PowerPoint that will be sent out to you on Monday. And also want to let you know that you may have seen some of the announcements last week that Springsted is been acquired together with by Baker Tilly. We're joining them to create one of the largest municipal advisory firms in the country. So look to hear more about that moving forward. So thank you so much, and we'll stand for any questions that you may have at this time.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. So we do have one question coming in right now. This is by James Gibson. Is there only one window to submit projects for OZ investment?
No. The window for submitting projects is continuous, but the amount of investment or the tax policy, the amount of the investors gain for it will decrease over time. So some of you that may be in Minnesota today that are familiar with a former program that we had here called the Job Z program, that was a 12-year program. If an investment took place at year 1, the investor received the largest benefit, but if you made an investment in year 4 or year 10, you received a significant decrease in the amount of value to that investor. Similar with the Opportunity Zone program. But we anticipate that anywhere from 75 to 90% of the capital will be deployed in the next 24 months.
Perfect. And just a reminder for everybody, there is a way for you to submit your questions into the box. It'll show up either at the bottom of your screen or the side of your screen. The next question we have is from Brian Starner. Are you aware of any transit authorities using a 3P approach in an OZ focused on transit-oriented development?
Not yet, since this program has been, or the tax policy was just really passed last year, and the OZ funds are just pulling themselves together. We haven't seen one yet, but I would anticipate we will soon.
Perfect. Okay. Can an investor put new cash into an OZ fund, or is it only capital gains that can be rolled into an OZ fund?
Only capital gains.
All right. Does alcoholic beverage restriction including breweries? I'm not sure what that means, but that's the question.
If you're talking about a craft brewing industry, yes, they would be prohibited from receiving capital from opportunity zones as far as we understand today.
Perfect. How does this benefit a single family development? I'm not sure if you have an answer.
Well, the way we would see these funds would be used mostly for apartments or mixed-use developments rather than single-family investors, single-family homes.
Okay.
Because again, the investor needs to gain a return on their investment to see the value from the Opportunity Zone program or policy. So I don't think individuals would be wanting to invest in a single-family home.
Okay. So we have another question related to the single-family homes. Can you walk us through how an OZ investment for single-family homes would work, and where does one get the list of OZ funds that have formed to date?
We'll include it with our materials on Monday, the one from that I mentioned earlier in the presentation of the 70 that are out there right now. But you can access that list from, what did I say earlier, the National Housing Organization. So I will send that out to everybody with our materials that we're sending out on Monday.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question is about the timeline. So no OZ fund can exist past 2028. Every project must be set to begin and end within the time period of 2028. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question?
So does every project have to be set up with and begin and end within the time period to 2028 from now until 2028?
No, that's the time frame that the investor is able to get their capital gains tax reduced, but the investment can go beyond that date.
Okay.
And the organization earlier was called the National Council of State Housing Agencies, the NCSHA.
All right. This next question, did I understand that nonprofits cannot create a fund?
No, they cannot create a fund because they don't have a capital gains liability. We are working with our partners and our new colleagues at Baker Tilly to put together a strategy for how communities and foundations can support the development of opportunity zone funds within their city and how they can potentially benefit from the creation of that fund.
Okay. So this one is based on current rules. If investment were to occur before the expiration of the zone, could the investor still receive benefit up to 2048?
I will have to follow back on that one when we submit the response to the questions on Monday. I'm not sure about that exact answer right now.
All right, perfect. Can you explain your early slide mention of public transportation incorporation into an OZ project?
Yes. So if you have an opportunity zone that's located within your community where there are other that's developed near public transit or near a public transit site or whatever, you should look towards developing that investment to encourage the opportunity zones funds to put a project near that. So if you have, road improvements or street improvements, sewer water lines, look to finance those to support the development. Because investors are only want to put monies into projects they know where they're going to return at. So if there are missing pieces of public infrastructure that could support a project, look to putting those in to encourage that development to take place. And our bond team here would love to help you put that together.
Okay. This next one, most opportunity zones are located in undesirable areas. How do you get these desirable?
Good question. Like I said earlier, with shovel-ready sites, is doing what you need to do to prepare it to get it ready to go. So if you have gathered, if you're trying to market a project or a part of your community that may be undesirable, create a plan or a strategy that supports a development to take place. So doing the public infrastructure investments, doing all the entitlement work, making sure that the property can be developed. If you need to do a phase 1 or a phase 2 environmental study, do those first, get that site ready to go. Because investors are going to want to put monies into a location where you can work to eliminate time and risk in their process. So if there are policies that you can create that will support that, look to eliminate time and risk in a project.
Okay. Do you see there being more larger opportunity zone funds doing multiple projects regionally or nationally, or a multiple smaller funds being created for a single specific project?
Anticipate that opportunity funds will be in larger metropolitan areas or maybe regional trade centers will have access to regional funds or maybe more of the large national funds. But if you're in a small town like where I grew up in southwestern Minnesota, a small community under 1,000 people, they have an opportunity zone in their town. It will likely be a local developer or a local contractor or other community-minded investors that will want to create their own self-certified investment fund and target it to a specific project. And that's what we're already seeing here in Minnesota.
Okay, how can you change a lot line for an opportunity zone as defined by the existing census tract? I think it says what developable land. What about developable land?
That is a question I'd have to ask the IRS when they get back into work, but I don't know how to do that yet. So, but opportunity zones are based upon a census tract and specific borders, so I would anticipate it would not be real easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you seen opportunity zone funds invested creatively in a public market by a local government?
Not yet.
All right. If a development is mixed use, is the opportunity zone fund for the developer, or could it be used for individual businesses in the mixed use? As such, would a restaurant be eligible?
The Opportunity Zone funds would be for the overall project, the project as a whole, for financing of the entire mixed-use building.
Okay. What is the best way to market your zone nationally? We have had some great development areas, but not sure how to most efficiently and effectively market them on a national market.
Creating a investment-ready prospectus that includes the information that we discussed earlier, laying out the strategy for the investor, what problems are going to be solved, what their investment is going to be used for, how they're going to get the 5 to 10x or whatever return rate they're looking for over the 10-year period, plus the opportunity zone tax incentive. Creating policies to support that those investments that will eliminate time and risk as part of their development. So creating a story that focuses on those things I think are more important related to a specific project, rather than trying to sell an overall zone area of hundreds to thousands of acres, depending on the size of that census tract.
Okay. Is a community development corporation eligible for Opportunity Zone funds?
Repeat the question. Kirsty, can you repeat the question?
Yes. Hold on just a second. Is a community development corporation eligible for Opportunity Zone funds?
Community development finance agencies are eligible to create an opportunity zone fund. If you're talking about under that designation, IRS designation, yes. But if you're just a local economic development authority or community development agency, then no.
Okay. So I think we have time for about 3 more questions, and we will go ahead and send all of these to the panel, and we will have a answer period in the email that's sent to you on Monday as well. So if you continue to have questions, please continue to submit those, but we have time to answer 3 more. So this question is, who brings the Opportunity Zone Fund to the table, the city or the developer? And would these developments require agreements between the city, the developer, and the Opportunity Zone Fund?
Typically, the developer would bring the Opportunity Zone funds along with their financing package and proposal to the city. Now, as far as an agreement, that would be if there's a tax incentive or other or an incentive or tax increment financing, some tool, there could be an agreement between the city and the developer regarding the actual terms of the project itself.
But if the developer is not seeking any local government funds or support for their project, they can self-certify, and the city will never know that that is taking place or that investment tool is being used to support the project.
Okay. What is a qualified Opportunity Zone stock?
Good question. We'll have to ask our tax accountant friends to answer that for you, and we'll get that as part of our response on Monday.
Okay. And then what are the best examples of Opportunity Zone prospectuses?
There are some out there that I've seen and that are very, how do I put this? Graphically, a lot of graphical images and a lot of Chamber of Commerce selling my community information. We would suggest that communities look more towards a specific project designed opportunity zone investment ready prospectus that really focuses on the project, focuses on the project costs and sources related to it, focuses on the investment value to a potential investor rather than being something that's general in the community. The rules for the program are the same, or the tax policy are the same nationwide. So what's going to set you apart is being able to create a strategy or craft a message that will answer the questions that investors want to have answered, rather than a general marketing piece about your community or your zone.
All right, and I think that we actually have time for one more, so I'll go ahead and ask one more. How can cities create an opportunity zone if they don't already have one? If a big user wanted to locate on an opportunity zone and the project was partially in an opportunity zone and partially in a non-opportunity zone, how would that be handled?
Well, if it's not designated as if a community doesn't have an opportunity zone already designated within their community, they cannot receive them. That requires an act of Congress to approve that moving forward. With a parcel that's part in and part out, I have to get some additional clarification on that, but as of right now, we would want to see the investment targeted in the opportunity zone area right now.
All right, wonderful. Well, I would like to thank you guys so much for providing this really great educational webinar. And then for everybody else, just a reminder that an email will be sent out to you on Monday with the recording as well as the PowerPoint slides and a variety of other resources for you. If you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out to Jean or Michaela. Their contact information is on the screen. And with that, I hope everybody has a good rest of your week and an excellent weekend. And thank you all so much.